Hi, my name is Janet. I was welcomed into this world as Charles, the firstborn son of my parents in Honolulu, Hawaii. I was probably about 4 years old when I knew that I was a girl. No one else knew this but me, but it became my very first conviction. My gender was my very first "this I know for sure" moment, as Oprah likes to call it.
It's only been 5 years since Janet Mock was living quietly in New York City, working at her dream job as an editor for People magazine. Up to that point, she had kept the details of her past private. But after Janet went public with her story, she instantly became one of the most visible and influential trans women in the world. She's now the host of her own show on MSNBC, and her powerful memoir, Redefining Realness, is a New York Times bestseller. How do you continue to live in the truth every day? You know, I believe that in order to live an awakened life, you have to live in the truth. Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that happens to yourself every day?
I wake up every single morning and I do Morning Pages by Julia Cameron from The Artist's Way.
Nice.
That has shifted the way that I've defined myself as an artist, as a storyteller, and as a writer. I wake up every morning, and I guess this is my form of meditation. I sit down and I do 3 longhand pages, telling myself what I'm thinking, getting it all out of my head so that I can just move on with the day. All that stuff is on the paper, I purged it out, and I can move on.
Do you do that with tea or coffee or water?
I do it with coffee.
Okay, all right. And are you listening to music?
No.
Are you eating a piece
No.
of toast or a banana?
My dog Cleo is at my feet,
Yeah.
at my desk, and I'm sitting there and I'm just writing with my lamp on, with my coffee, and myself just there.
Do you have a favorite quote?
I'm blanking on my Audre Lorde quote right now. You must define yourself for yourself, or you'll be crushed up into other people's fantasies of who you are.
Ooh, good. That's a tweet. That is good.
I live for these tweets. I was like, if I get a couple tweets, I've been successful today.
Whoa, tweet. Okay, what inspires and motivates you?
The quest to show up as whatever I am that day. If I'm empty, I'm empty, and I'm okay with being at empty. If I'm full that day and I'm doing the most, I'm okay with being full and doing the most. For me, it's about no longer performing for people. And so for me, that's what kind of keeps me going. It's like, how can I just show up and be who I am today? I'm not gonna perform activist, I'm not gonna perform intellectual or writer. I'm just gonna be Janet today, and this is what Janet is today. Mm-hmm. And so that's what keeps me going, is that quest for just being able to just be present and be myself. Not for people, but for me. Because I think that that's the only way for me to be useful.
I love how you say that I can't pinpoint to a pivotal aha moment. Grew taller and bolder despite the cues, rebuttals, and certainties of those around me, who told me through a slightly furrowed brow or a shake of the head that even attempting to cross that void was wrong. I just thought that I was so moved by that, because I think of your 5-year-old self, and there's something in you that knows I can't do that, or somebody is going to be upset with me for doing that. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
it's also interesting too in the sense of I couldn't fault the people who were telling me that, because that's how they learned the world.
That's all they knew.
That's all they knew.
I love this next sentence too. When I look back at my childhood, I often say, I always knew I was a girl since the age of 3 or 4, a time when I began cataloging memories. No one, not my mother, my grandmother, my father, or my siblings, gave me any reason to believe I was anything other than my parents' firstborn son, my father's namesake. But it was my first conviction, the first thing I grew certain of as a young person, when I say, I always knew I was a girl with such certainty. Tell me what that felt like.
Confusing. It was confusing because I didn't have language yet. I didn't know how to articulate what I was feeling in rebuttal to the people who are charged with my care. I came into the world supposedly knowing to trust my mother, knowing to trust my father. You know, as a young person, you don't have much agency or decision making.
That's right. Right.
And so you just go wherever people pick you up and take you and
Yeah.
say that this is the way the world is.
Uh-huh.
And something internal inside of me told me constantly that what they're saying is wrong. And so it creates this dissonance with who can you trust if you know that inside, as a 5-year-old, that this is how you know yourself to be.
So you knew that something was different, right? Do you think they knew too?
Oh, yeah.
They all knew.
They all have their stories now.
Yeah.
Right? My mom talks about the first time when I put her earring backing in my ear and it fell down and I had to go into the surgeons and get it suctioned out. My father talks about the times in which he would watch me with a side eye, skeptical, wondering why I moved the way I did around the world, around our little community.
Because you were saying in the book you describe it as why you held your wrists that way.
You know, why I held my wrist, why I had a little swish in my hips. I had no idea why I was performing self in this way, why I was expressing my gender in this way. I didn't have language to understand that. And I don't think my father did either. All he knew was that that's not how a boy is supposed to act.
This is what's amazing to me, and I think to anybody who reads Redefining Realness, is that at 15 years old, you made a decision after meeting your friend Wendy that you were going to go to school as a girl. That you basically transitioned in your own heart and that you had the courage to step out and do that at 15 years old.
Yeah.
You went into school your freshman year as Charles, and by your sophomore year, you were now Janet.
Full time.
Full time.
I come back after 9th grade and I was like, I'm not going to present in a way that makes anyone else comfortable. I'm going to present in a way that makes me comfortable. And so I had just been elected class treasurer. And so I stand on that stage the first day of school, our sophomore class, and I say, hello, everyone. I'm Janet.
And did everyone just accept it?
I wouldn't say accepted it. I think a lot of people tolerated it.
I think that's pretty amazing.
I marvel at it now. At that time, it seemed like the only possibility, the only pathway. All I had, growing up, I grew up poor. I grew up as a Black child in communities that were already suffering. And so the only resource I had was my truth, was myself. That's the one thing I could control in the world, is to present and be who I knew I was. And I knew that living authentically and being myself would be the first step towards any kind of success.